Let's get right to your reality check. After years of condemning the Iran nuclear deal, President Trump dealt perhaps the fatal blow on Tuesday, announcing his intent to withdraw from the accords. The 2015 agreement held that in exchange for relief of U.S. sanctions, Iran would limit its nuclear activity. President Trump also vowed to reimpose many of the previous U.S. sanctions on Iran, an essential step in terminating one of the most important arms deals in recent history. The controversy is sure to go on, with the deal's defenders warning that Trump's decision could lead to a collapse of the U.S. relations in Europe, it could spike oil prices out of control, and it could even lead to a war in the Middle East. Let's get right to it. This one is big, America. This one is really big. On like a scale of F-ups, that's one that a person can have, this is sort of the cherry on top. Here's why. Was the Iran deal perfect? Absolutely not. There is nobody in the world that worked on this deal that would tell you that this deal is perfect, because it isn't. But here is what this deal did. This deal created one less nuclear-armed country in the world, Iran. And Iran, as we all know, America, is a foe to American national security. So we've got to find a way to contain Iran, period. There's no ands or buts about it. And this deal, with the blood, sweat, and tears of Secretary John Kerry on it, literally, his forehead, like sweat beads on the first page of this deal. Right? This deal ensured that Iran would not develop a nuclear weapon. Since signing the deal in 2015, Iran hasn't developed a nuclear weapon. We have IAEA inspectors in the region, in the area, in the nuclear sites, checking to make sure that Iran hasn't developed a nuclear weapon. On top of that, America, there's this myth going around that we gave Iran all these U.S. tax dollars. That is not true. The facts matter here at the Fowler Show, and so we're going to give you the facts. Here is the fact. The fact is pretty simple. When there was a point in time where we seized money from Iran, that money was put into an escrow account. It was held stateside here in the United States. As part of the deal, we released that money back to the Iranians. Period. End of story. Not U.S. tax dollars, Iranian money that gained interest in a U.S. bank. Period. Now let's get to this particular deal. So the Supreme Leader Ayatollah responded on Twitter to President Trump's announcements, and here's what he said. The U.S. president's shallow and ludicrous behavior wasn't unexpected. The same behavior existed in previous U.S. presidents, yet Iranian nation is persistent. While former U.S. presidents pass away, the IRI is still standing. The man's corpse will also be worms food, while IRI stands strong. So basically what the Ayatollah is saying here is, listen, we've seen many U.S. presidents. We've seen presidents hold a hard line towards us. We've seen presidents try to bomb us at night. But we're still here, and they aren't. I'm not saying this is the best modus operandi for the position for the Iranians to take. But you have to understand why the Iranians are upset. Because they came to the table over and over again. Every single time we as a nation and the global world have asked for Iran to come to the table. Whether we like what they did or not, whether we have a deal or not, Iran always comes to the table. And so by provoking Iran with a deal that we know works and saying we're going to pull out of this deal just because I said so during the campaign trail, just because I said so and because I have a national security advisor and a team that finally agrees with me to do it, doesn't mean it's necessarily a good idea. But let's take a listen to President Trump making the official announcement to pull out from the deal.
We cannot prevent an Iranian nuclear bomb under the decaying and rotten structure of the current agreement. The Iran deal is defective at its core. Therefore, I am announcing today that the United States will withdraw from the Iran nuclear deal. In a few moments, I will sign a presidential memorandum to begin reinstating U.S. nuclear sanctions on the Iranian regime.
And what makes this even scarier, beyond the fact that we've pulled out and now the Iranians and some Iranian forces have started, missile strikes in the Golan Heights, is a senior State Department official acknowledged to reporters that the U.S. did not discuss any Plan B with European partners ahead of Trump's announcement Tuesday that the U.S. would be pulling out of the deal. So not only did we not propose a Plan B, but we left our European allies high and dry with, remember, before this all started, there was literally a charm offensive between Angela Merkel, between the Prime Minister of France, between Theresa May, the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, all trying to convince Erdogan, all trying to convince President Trump, please don't pull out of this deal. This deal's not perfect. We can work on some fixes, we can work on some tweaks, but please don't pull out because this deal ensures that Iran won't get a nuclear weapon. And it's also created new markets for many of our banks and many of our businesses, and it has also decreased the price of crude oil. Right? So the U.S. withdrawal, here's a couple things. So when not only are we putting the sanctions back on Iran, we're also putting the sanctions, and there's a wind down period, but we're putting sanctions on European companies that do business with Iran. The company Boeing, you know Boeing, the air manufacturer, they just signed a multi-billion-dollar deal with Iran to build them some aircrafts. Now that deal has gone down the toilet. So we're losing American jobs, and America, honestly, folks, is going to be less safe. Period. Now, here's a couple things you need to know. The U.S. Treasury Secretary, Steve Mnuchin, said that the U.S. has a slightly different view on how to execute that, talking about the sanctions, right? Because analysts wanted the EU could again threaten to use a so-called blocking status to prohibit European companies from complying with the U.S. sanctions. Now, really, the only countries that are really going to get hurt are the Europeans. Because remember, the Chinese, while yes, some of their countries do business with Iran and they were part of the Iran deal, the Chinese government has enough money on cash reserves to literally take the blow for their companies when the sanctions, if U.S. sanctions hit them. Like, they could literally take the blow and pay the money. They could absorb it. The Europeans don't have that leverage or that ability, right? The crude oil prices have risen 4% following Trump's announcement, and that only goes higher. And for you at home, as we enter the summer driving season, Iran should be at the front of your mind, because it will be taking a lot of money, a little bit more money out of your wallet. You see, when we make deals and we pull out of the Iran deal, we literally decrease the supply of oil. And by decreasing the supply of crude oil, we increase the cost. Decrease supply, you increase cost, because demand stays the same. And as we go into a period where there's a heavy demand, America, and we've pulled out of this Iran deal, for all those Trump voters out there, when you take that trip to grandma and grandpa's, remember that President Trump pulled out this Iran deal because it's going to cost you a couple more pennies at the pump. But beyond costing you more pennies at the pump, and beyond the damage this can do to the economies and businesses, both in the United States and in Europe, let's just talk about the world for a minute. Because we here at the Fowler Show believe that we are global citizens. We are global citizens committed, many of us, to ensuring peace and ensuring an end to suffering. The Iran deal did that by doing this. By limiting or curtailing Iran's ability to get a nuclear weapon, the threat of a nuclear annihilation went down just a little bit. And as we as a nation look forward to President Trump having a sit-down with Kim Jong-un in Singapore this coming June, Iran should be at the front of our mind. Because for the North Koreans and for all their partners, they're asking this one question. Is America's foreign policy stable enough to cut us a deal that will be long-lasting? Are they stable enough to cut us a deal that will ensure peace on the Korean Peninsula from President Trump and beyond? By President Trump pulling out of the Iran deal, what he basically said to the world is America's checks can't be cashed.